Right, last one for tonight. It's more of just a little bit of background for Adolf Hitler. Before I start putting some videos on about Nazi Germany, Hitler's rise to power, and life in Nazi Germany itself. Hitler himself was born in 1889 in Austria, so he wasn't actually a German, but he was German speaking, and he did consider himself to be German. Hitler led a very... His childhood's interesting, would be the best way of putting it. He didn't excel in any way at school, by all accounts. There's a very interesting school photograph of a young Adolf Hitler and a class photo, and he just looks the epitome of defiance, would be the best way I could put it as a teacher. He had a great fascination with art. He really did like art. He wanted to be an artist when he grew up, and he also had a fascination with the mysticism apparently surrounding churches and monasteries. He was very, very close to his mother. He was said to have been devastated when his mom died of cancer. Some people have said this was the reason he didn't like Jews, because it was claimed that his mother's doctor was Jewish. He failed to get into a number of art schools. He did move to Vienna, which was the capital. The claims when he didn't get into the art schools again is Jewish professors and Jews running these art schools and universities didn't let him in, so it was someone for him to blame. So some people say this is why he hates Jews. He drifted around in Vienna. Didn't really make any type of name for himself at all. He struggled by all accounts, but it was in Vienna where he would have came across anti-Jewish or anti-Semitic views, because Vienna at the time was huge for this. There was a lot of anti-Semitism in Vienna. Hitler would have been exposed to that, and probably would have put it across that the Jews were a very convenient scapegoat to explain his own failings and his own problems. He refused to go into the Austrian military, and he considered himself German, and he moves to Germany, he moves to Munich. He actually got special permission to join the Bavarian army, because Munich's in Bavaria, in World War One, and he had his first real success as quite a decorated and honoured soldier. He did well in the war. He got the Iron Cross. The end of World War One, Hitler was in a field hospital, the victim of a mustard gas attack, where he was temporarily blinded. He was devastated by the end of the war, absolutely devastated, like many Germans were. He was in a field hospital, and he returned home to a very different Germany to which he'd left, and one that was pride had been destroyed by the defeat in World War One. Gaping vacuums in politics, where communists, for example, there were attempts of communist takeovers, and he was asked by the German army to go and spy basically on a small political party that met in one of the local beer halls. Hitler himself didn't drink, and this party that he spied on, led by a man called Anton Drexler, would be the Nazi party eventually, and Hitler basically went in when it was just a small gathering, made a speech that saw great potential in Hitler via his anger towards particularly the Treaty of Versailles and apparently Jews, and Hitler went through the ranks and became a star attraction for this party. He had ties to the Freikorps, which would demobilise soldiers from World War One that would go on to become his stormtroopers, Sturmabteilung, or brown shirts, and they would be very handy in disrupting rival political groups, particularly the communists from having their own meetings. The Nazis were not a huge party at this time, but Hitler was confident that they appealed to the feeling in Germany at that time. There was a lot of bad public feeling towards politicians at the end of World War One. Blame on the politicians for signing the armistice and the Versailles Treaty, which came in as a result of that. Even though not powerful, Hitler did have an audience in Bavaria, in Munich, where the Nazi Party were based, and the views of this party were that they wanted all Germans to have a greater Germany, which we know he's going to go for, abolish the Treaty of Versailles, which would have attracted a lot of support. It was hated in Germany at that time. So the argument could be, without a Treaty of Versailles, would there have been a Hitler? Separate topic for a separate day, I guess. He wanted German people to have land to live in, Lebensraum. He said if you want to be a member of Germany, you have to be German blood. This wouldn't be, in his view, Jewish people, by the way. He said Germany needed a strong government, strong central government, so that would mean no coalition governments. He wanted a strong government to deal with the problems the country faced. And leading into my next video, which will be about the conditions for Hitler to come into power, what was going on, basically 1923 you get hyperinflation, and it's almost like the cherry on the cake in Germany at that time. The start of the 1920s, Germany struggled massively. Basically you saw attempted communist takeovers, you saw an invasion of a German area called the Ruhr, R-U-H-R, which was heavily industrialized, and Germany couldn't afford to make its reparations, and approximately 60,000 French and Belgian soldiers went in to take reparations in the form of raw materials, and Germany, with only having an army of 100,000 men, couldn't defend itself, and the government advocated, said, look, don't help them, but don't fight them either, and it was called passive resistance, where the people would just do nothing. It's like a strike, but they would get paid for the strike. And basically that would help towards something called hyperinflation, where the money which was being printed in Germany was printed, so much money became in circulation that the value of the money was nothing. It became worthless. It's almost, the example I use in class with money is, if money's rare, it's valuable. So if you had a comic book at the I don't know, the very first Spider-Man comic in mint condition, you could put that on eBay for a princely sum. But if Stan Lee decided, I've got 300,000 copies of this Spider-Man or this Wolverine comic, and I'm going to release them next week, they're also in mint condition. Your comic devalues because the market becomes flooded. It's no longer rare, and it's the same with money. Germany printed too much money for people to get their hand, just too much money. It was no longer rare, and there was that much money in circulation that its value went down. So there's a story of a priest going on a train journey, because in those days you didn't have eBay or Amazon to order from, and you had to go to your nearest town or city to get anything like major goods. And he wanted a pair of leather shoes, and he took money with him on his train trip to get a pair of leather shoes. By the time his train journey was over and he was in the town or city he was going to, he had enough for a cup of coffee and a piece of cheese, because the value of the money had declined so much. Children were playing with money, like building things like houses out of it. Instead of buying coal or anything like that, people just burned money. There's tales of people wallpapering their walls with the money. You've got 1 million mark banknotes. The money situation in Germany was a joke. People were going shopping with wheelbarrows. So at the end of the day, really, this is a problem. If you've retired and you've got your pension money or enough money to see you but through the rest of your life, you're now hard enough to see you through a couple of weeks. There's a story of an old lady having to sell her house to survive for a couple of months. The only people who benefited really were foreign visitors with the exchange rate, or people who had a fixed loan, where you had to pay, say, 2,000 marks back. Well, you pay the 2,000 marks back, but it's like paying 50 pence back. It became nothing. So financially, Germany was in a real mess in 1923. And in the next video we're going to look at some of these problems at the start of the 20s, how far they got put right, and then what happened at the end of the 20s to set the scene for when we can answer this question: why would people support Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party? Thanks for watching.